Imagine an air defense system suddenly turning against its own forces, a software manipulation that tricks a missile battery into reading a friendly fighter jet as a hostile target. Pulling off that kind of external hack is extraordinarily difficult. It requires penetrating secure networks, bypassing encryption, and spending weeks mapping the system's architecture. An adversary doesn't need to break in if they built the hardware in the first place. Under China's National Intelligence Law of 2017, every Chinese entity, any company, any employee, anywhere, must assist national intelligence services when asked. There is no judicial review. There is no option to refuse. That legal mandate doesn't distinguish between civilian and military clients, and it directly applies to the companies supplying the hardware that currently powers the defense and communications architecture of 32 NATO allies. This legal framework transforms NATO's primary cyber risk into a structural compromise established at the factory. The vulnerability is legally mandated and deeply embedded across the entire alliance before a single device is even powered on. To see how deep this goes, start at the top layer, the communications backbone. Until very recently, virtually all of Belgium's telecommunications infrastructure ran on Chinese equipment. That includes the mobile networks used by the administrative staff at NATO's own headquarters in Brussels. The exposure scales up from there. Germany hosts the largest concentration of NATO forces in Europe. American, British, and Dutch troops all route their logistics and command communications through local networks. Right now, up to 60% of Germany's 5G radio access network, the physical antennas and base stations, relies on hardware built by Huawei. Security analysts worry about a specific scenario during a geopolitical crisis. In it, the Chinese government orders its telecom manufacturers to activate hidden code, sleeper vulnerabilities, preemptively embedded in the base stations, to trigger a network blackout. This specific event hasn't happened, but the mechanism to make it happen is fully in place. Beijing has the legal authority to issue the command. The manufacturers are obligated to comply, and the software is already sitting inside the networks. The alliance is spending billions to harden its forward military positions in Eastern Europe, while simultaneously routing its core communications through infrastructure legally accessible to an adversary. Moving down from the cell towers, we hit the physical machines. The drones and counter-drone systems NATO forces are deploying share a structural dependency on Chinese components. Look at the raw supply chain. China controls roughly 90% of global rare earth processing. They currently manufacture 99% of the world's drone batteries and produce about 90% of the permanent magnets required for the electric motors that drive modern platforms. These specific rare earth magnets are critical components in the West's most advanced platforms, found in the F-35 fighter jet and Tomahawk cruise missiles, to the propulsion systems of nuclear submarines. The dependency is so entrenched that it creates a procurement paradox. The Pentagon maintains a blue list of strictly vetted drones for government use, yet most of these cleared platforms still operate on Chinese-manufactured electric motors. Banning the import of finished Chinese hardware means very little if the Western defense industry lacks the physical capability to construct its own weapons without relying on Beijing's raw materials. But the sharpest risk lies at the very bottom of the stack, the chips and sensors making the targeting decisions. Modern air defense systems rely on an identification layer, machine vision software that analyzes sensor data in real time to determine if a target is friend or foe. A military can write its own highly secure classification software, but if that software runs on a foreign manufactured processor or reads data from a Chinese-made LiDAR sensor, the entire setup becomes an unauditable black box. You cannot isolate untrustworthy hardware. Many modern chips have remote management interfaces built in at the factory. An adversary with access can silently alter sensor data from beneath the software layer, manipulating the targeting decision before the operator even sees it. The legal mechanism to force that manipulation exists today. The physical access to the manufacturing process is a given, and we already know Chinese components are integrated into classified NATO platforms. A compromised communications network can halt logistics. But a compromised identification layer turns a well-functioning defense system into a lethal weapon, pointed directly at the people it was built to protect. Western governments are trying to respond. The US is banning commercial Chinese drones and pushing European allies to rip out Huawei telecom networks. But these policies are colliding with hard economic reality. Ripping out entrenched infrastructure without having domestic alternatives ready at scale is painful. It guarantees massive financial costs, years of installation delays, and severe immediate capability gaps for the military units waiting for replacements. We are used to a traditional model of cyber warfare, where an external hacker spends weeks studying a target's algorithms, searching for a single flaw to exploit. Owning the supply chain completely flips that dynamic. China doesn't need to intercept NATO training data or probe firewalls for weaknesses. The manufacturers already possess the source code, the firmware, and the update pipelines baked in during the initial manufacturing process. For a modern military alliance, writing your own software model is only the first step. True security means recognizing that the threat surface extends deep into the hardware itself. You cannot fully defend your identification layer unless you own the stack, all the way down to the foundry.